Yesterday's conspiracy theories, tomorrow's headlines. Most are still asleep and I ain't talking about no bedtime. The truth is not a Google search, you need to get your head right. The Greek goddess of illusion was called Media I'm not a coincidence theorist, I look for thread lines. Smashing every deadline, no longer smashing red wine. Though I can hear the bells chime, it feels like the end times. That probably should have been smashed on red wine, but the carnal mind is foolish. Obey and end up ghoulish. Don't get used by instinct, take control and learn to use it. Make a load of earnest music, earn a few quid, learn a few tricks. Sure, the truth is persecuted, this whole world is pure abusive. Know a bit about everything and everything about nothing. Figured out my noggin while you picture out shopping. You sit about watching while I dish it out. Stop it, I don't mean to sound cocky, I'm not even proud of it. It's a second nature to me, just to me it's out honest. I don't even need to sound honest, never been about profit. Everything but out on it, you can bet your house on it. Doubt I'll be out for the count when the sounds, and I'm down for the beat, no beat down. I mean, how long's it been? Help me out. I've been the only one who's held me down. All in the mind, hell freeze now. Still sick with it, healthy how? Few bars down and the world freaked out. I don't reach out, I seek out to speak out. I'ma recount the reasons they beat out.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in this beautiful world. This is 509 Divine Pints Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Daniel Pena, and today I got a amazing guest, Simeon Hein, a massive category to him with his knowledge, man. He got everything. I'm going to go ahead and let himself tell you guys about you, or, okay, you get it. I'm going to go ahead and let him speak about himself.
Hey, Joseph. How are you doing today? Thanks for having me here.
Hey, I'm doing amazing. I just got out the gym and I feel honestly energetic. I feel great.
Cool. Yeah, it's actually Simeon. And
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and I got my degree in your state at WSU a long time ago.
Hey, I love that place. I'm all about the Cougs.
Yeah, it's over on, you're in the center of the state, so it's kind of more over to the east. And that's where
in Pullman.
That's where I did my time.
Okay, can you go ahead and describe your portfolio a little bit for my viewers? You honestly delve on a lot of topics that I find fascinating, that I've been researching for seriously 10 years, hardcore. Yeah. I've been experiencing for 20 years that you talk about, some of these things. So, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and let you talk about it.
Yeah, well, Joseph, I got a PhD in sociology at WSU, and my focus was something called fractal geometry. And fractal geometry is the study of natural shapes, trees and rivers and clouds, not straight lines like we were taught in our high school Euclidean math classes, where everything resolves straight lines, but the way nature actually looks, the way your body looks, the way your heart looks, the cardiovascular system, lungs, everything's branching, right? It's not straight lines. It's made of space and continual branching into smaller and smaller branches, just like trees and clouds. And that's the way reality really looks in the vast majority of the universe. There are straight lines when you go to the really smallest scale. You can find crystals and things at those scales. But at the scales that you and I live at, there are no really straight things. You got basalt columns in Washington State and things like that. Those are pretty straight, but still, if you get close to them, you look at those basalt columns, they're made of little cracks and fissures. So what really attracted me to this idea was that, as a graduate student, is that there is no definite measure of distance between 2 points like we learned in school. It depends on the size of your ruler. As your ruler gets smaller and smaller, those basalt columns are going to get larger and larger, because the ruler, as it gets tiny and tiny, is going to fit in all the cracks and spaces. And Benoit Mandelbrot, this mathematician several decades ago, realized this, and he came up with this example for us. If you measure the coastline of a country, you would think that there's a absolute distance, like the coastline of Great Britain. You just go all the way around, you're going to get a distance. But what he showed is that as your ruler gets smaller, the distance changes. Eventually, you're going to be measuring space between sand grains. So what that tells us is that the space between any 2 points is infinite. It's not fixed. And in an infinite universe, what do you got? You got a lot of room for stuff we haven't discovered yet. You got a lot of room for things that we haven't officially recognized yet. You could call them ETs, you can call them UFOs, you can call them cryptids, you can call them interdimensional beings. And it's pretty arrogant of us modern people to think that we know everything that's going on, because fractal geometry says you're just getting an estimate based on your perception of reality. And if you had a different perception, you would see more and more of reality. And that's really what I've been doing ever since I got my degree, is realizing there's just a lot more going on.
Right, and some of these topics include Bigfoot,
Right.
psychic viewing. Honestly, I've been a bit of a dabbler in the psychic realm. You see, most of my life, I have definitely, I guess, been in a meditative way. I would call it transcendental sometimes. Literally, like, at night, I'll just be floating through the ether, picking up information. I'll come back down with it, kind of just through visuals, kind of through telemetry, understanding, through the books, and putting this all together in a web, a giant Maya web, as the ancients would say. This fractal web that we live in. There's information can pour into us, and I'm fascinated with it. Seeing also how in Washington State in 1975, the Army Engineer Corps had this Bigfoot search, and they actually had 3 pages worth in their source. And, that's a very fascinating subject. We understand that Bigfoot may be of an ancient race, through, let's say biblical, the tribe of Esau, how they were hairy, or we may understand them as off-worlders, or, however this may turn out. And you may know more. And so I really appreciate this. Well, I'm more than me. I'll be honest. I'm only, 29 years into this, and you're far ahead, sir. I
I've just been around on Earth longer than you have, but that doesn't mean I really know what Bigfoot is. Nobody really knows, and this is a big surprise to me. When I went to WSU, Joseph, there was an anthropologist right 1 floor above me named Grover Krantz, one of the first academics in the U.S., as far as I know, to study Bigfoot seriously. And I never spoke to him. I didn't even know he was there at the time, but he was only a couple offices away, 1 flight up. I might have run into him in the stairs, in an elevator, and that was the famous Grover Krantz, who was convinced it was some sort of relic primate, a view that was common a couple decades ago, that this was some sort of undiscovered primate or ape from, a species of primates that may have come across the Bering Straits from Asia, Gigantopithecus blackie, as the creature is called, a huge sort of ape. But there's no evidence Gigantopithecus ever was in North America. There's been no bones or teeth found from Gigantopithecus, and it went extinct, 350,000 years ago. So, according to what I know, so we know that idea that it's a relic primate is not a good explanation for what people experience. I would go more along your line of thinking that this is some sort of other species, or it's related to us in a way we don't understand on the human family tree. It's there somewhere, parallel to us. Maybe humans and Bigfoot are descended from the same hominids from hundreds of thousands of years ago, but they've developed a lot of abilities that humans don't know they have, or we don't have. They have these, what we would call, for lack of a better word, paranormal characteristics. Ability to become invisible, ability to teleport, enormous strength, and seen around UFOs frequently, ability to project thoughts into your mind. People report hearing the Bigfoot speaking in their mind while they're in their homes, telling them to come outside sometimes because the Bigfoot want to play, and which they really seem to do. Sometimes they just seem like they want to hang out. And they can influence your mind, apparently. I mean, according to these witness accounts that I'm becoming familiar with over the past couple of years, you have to understand, this is a big surprise to me. I went to WSU. I could have run into someone that knew about this topic, but I never did. And I only discovered it a couple of years ago, and was very surprised that even in the Pullman area, there were Bigfoot sightings. There were sightings in the Wallowa Mountains, right outside of Walla Walla, Washington. and tons of plaster casts. The famous Paul Freeman footage, the forest, the kind of the ranger that patrolled the Walla Walla watershed. Which river is that there? There's a river there and there's a watershed around it. They try to keep people out to keep the water clean. I mean, he was a ranger back there, and he took this famous footage, which people can see on YouTube. Have you seen it, Joseph? It's called the Freeman footage, Paul Freeman footage.
No, I am not, but I'm going to go ahead and save that for later.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, there he is walking along. He had seen it, and he saw these tracks. He's taking plaster casts, and then one of these huge creatures comes out on the path in front of him, doesn't even pay attention to him. I mean, massive. And there he is taking video of it. So it's considered to be as good as the Patterson-Gimlin film. And as you probably know, Bob Patterson and Bob Gimlin, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin are from Yakima. They're not too far away.
Yep.
Kennewick, not too far away from you. So
right. And especially that's very close to where Dr. J. Allen Hynek was doing his studies. Well, his under Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Dr. Gray Long. And this area is very interesting. See, yeah. I live in a center of an area where, roughly an hour away, we got, this study where the UFOs are from Dr. J. Allen Hynek. I got another 60 minutes away where Hanford is, where Project Manhattan was taking place. Another 30 minutes. There's Stonehenge that was supposedly built in the 1900s, but I don't believe it. I really don't. Then we got the Bigfoot sightings all across like another 90 minutes. I just live in a fascinating area. That's kind of why I named myself 509 Divine Pines. It's just a beautiful area, and it's very magical.
I get it. 509 is your area code.
Yeah, and I kind of look into Majestic 12 and how Eisenhower was also very much involved with supposedly the Greta Treaty, and how we understand that there may be extraterrestrials in this mountain going ahead and involving themselves with Bigfoot and being highly in occurrence with Bigfoot. And hey, man, this is just the start of it. Like I think within the last 7 to 15 years, we're really starting to make a push for it as a collective. You're kind of start seeing a lot more people speak up and really showcase what they know, and also be part of the experience where like people are coming forward. And me, I've had some UFO experiences. This is a amazing area. So
yeah.
So how's this, continuing on, how would you go ahead and see this involved with us and our relation, the UFO phenomenon? And
look, we have to have a national discussion of this topic. You and me and our listeners here and viewers are not going to figure this out by ourselves. It's a very complex topic with a lot of players and a lot of different species and types of life, in my humble opinion. And their only way to unravel this is to have all the witnesses come forward who know about this. And we haven't had that happen yet. I think, there's a lot of people that want the UFO topic to be separate from the Bigfoot topic, to be separate from the psychic viewing topic. And these are, have these all hermetically sealed categories, but they're not. They overlap because they deal with the same fundamental principles of nature, and where you get one, you seem to get the other. In my most recent book, Dark Matter Monsters, I say it has something to do with a type of coherent matter. And the reason I'm saying that is, even if you go back to Uri Geller coming over from Israel to work at Stanford Research Institute when they were doing psychic tests on him and testing his PK ability and so forth, their researchers working with Uri saw cryptids around their homes. Little UFOs had things appear and disappear, and they had a lot of strangeness going on. They're just testing someone who's a remote viewer. So, but he's also a psychic, and so he's also a PK practitioner. So the point is, these phenomena overlap. Now, you could just say, I want to focus on the nuts and bolts UFOs. You could do that. You're going to be missing a large range of the phenomena. I mean, look at Jacques Vallée. You've heard of Jacques Vallée. He was worked with J. Allen Hynek, worked in Project Blue Book, another well-known UFO researcher that's been involved in this area. You know, when I personally talked to him one time after one of the conferences, IRVA conference in Las Vegas, I remember standing there with him and he said, these phenomena are not separate. Where people have UFO experiences, they often have premonitions before the experience. They find that strange things are happening around their homes after the encounter. They may have abilities that they didn't know they had before, psychic perception, orbs showing up, because it's the same underlying reality. And we're the ones that may be in a kind of a hermetically sealed box who are trying to push it away. But it just could be that this is how the universe really works. And all of these topics, and I mean all of them, these are quite real. We haven't as a society had a discussion about this seriously. We've been in the debunking stage for 70, 100 years. And even today, Joseph, there was a New York Times article about UFOs. We're waiting for some new New York Times UFO. I mean, they did break it open in 2017 with talking about ATIP and OSAP, which I'm sure you know about. But today they came out and said, you know, a lot of these so-called UFOs are just airborne trash that's been misidentified. And that is a little hard for me to believe based on some of the people that I've interviewed in the military over the years. You don't normally hypnotize people after they've encountered airborne trash. Okay, so if we want to go just back to the weather balloon argument that you just saw a weather balloon or a piece of airborne, I'm not saying some of it might not be a party balloon that's floating around. You see those occasionally, but look, this is not what our pilots and our radar specialists in the Navy and the Air Force are seeing for decade after decade after decade that can go 20,000 miles an hour and make right angle turns. Airborne trash doesn't do that.
And these could be what the ancients would know as Vermanas, or, you know, there's this other cult that was known in Greece as the creators of automatons. Yeah. So, you know, there is these ancient tribes and ancient stories about these things constantly present.
Yes. Now, this applies to UFOs. You're right. We had the Vimanas in Hindu scriptures in India. This goes back thousands of years. And you've had all these accounts of battles in the skies. And then even the Bigfoot you're talking about, the Native Americans in your state, the Yakima Indians, have had a lot of encounters with these beings. And every major tribe in North America had some word for Bigfoot. Do you think they're all making this up? You know, they draw hieroglyphics of the pictographs of beaver and different insects and fish. And then there's a huge hairy monster. I mean, I doubt they're just making this up off the top of their head of all the other pictographs they drew of animals that we can recognize. So they all had it in their traditions, and they have different ideas of what Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe is. They all have different ideas, but they had it there. So it's really us. We're the ones with this very limited worldview, and we've been defending this really strongly, even today. So in New York Times again, instead of wanting to look at the data, listen, I know people that have handled wreckage from UFOs, top level scientists who were asked to identify what this wreckage was. And they told me it was 1,000 years ahead of our electronics. It was so small, so microscopically sized. We don't have the technology to build stuff like that. And certainly not with isotopes from other parts of the galaxy. Now, the New York Times should be interviewing these people. I've talked to them. Why doesn't the New York Times talking to them? These people tell me it's a big national secret. That is what I'm being told. And it is classified. So we've got a long ways to go, but we can do it. We just, like we do everything else in this country, you have discussions about it. We have internet, we have TV, we have a lot of ways to have discussions. Now let's be adults about these topics and talk to the witnesses and find out what we're dealing with here. Otherwise, we're just going to stay kind of in the same position and for a while, which is sort of, is it real? Is it trash in the air? You know. So.
Right, and these things could be linked on a DNA level, as we know that powers that be are constantly searching for lineages of the Nephilim to try to recreate a lineage of Adam that they're trying to study the DNA. They're also, recreating things like the mammoth. So it really goes to show that what we're being told is it's very broad. And what is really out there is very wide. And, Graham Hancock tries to say that we are a species with amnesia. So we constantly forget over thousands of years. And, maybe per se that there is some type of fractal nature that only limits a certain percentage of its collective on a higher frequency, through attunement. So maybe we are by nature, us, the speakers, the voice, the words of the reality. Reality must speak, and so we are that voice. So while other people are the workers, hey, we're here to go ahead and share that information, and together, we can go ahead and kind of start breaking down this iceberg. We have a little bit of understanding of it. If we look at the Bosnian pyramid, currently right now, that is one of the active ancient technologies that we currently see. It produces healing, it produces its own energy, and while it's very speculative from a mainstream American standpoint. No, if we look at it from a historical global standpoint and a just ancient standpoint, like, oh no, now we can definitely see how these technologies have been existent, how it's related to us, how we should open our eyes, and we should really go ahead and start piecing this together. Okay, we shouldn't say that it's just nonsense to be like, oh yeah, we can heal through the sound, and these creatures out there are always enemies in the sky, and Bigfoot's just a mysterious being. Like, no, okay, if we just take all of this information and put it together in one big box and start putting colors to it, me and you can definitely start putting a 3D pattern and feeding it out to the masses.
I agree, but let me give you an example of how this could start this discussion. I mean, there's one level, which you're saying, which is true. We can investigate these phenomena. But I've been involved in investigating these for a long time and seen other people investigating it. What we need to have is break through to a national discussion, not just you and me and the listeners of the show and people that are interested, but it has to be accepted as some sort of scientific fact. Now, in order for that to happen, we're not going to make anyone believe anything. It's not like saying you have to believe this. It's just, are you willing to look at the information, the data, and the witnesses? Now, I attended an event in 2013 you might have heard of called the Citizen Hearing. Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. I don't know if you were interested in these topics 10 years ago. You were probably a lot younger, but it was a self-funded mock hearing because they couldn't get any sitting senators or congresspeople to attend. And it was held at the National Press Club. And there were 40 witnesses over 5 days. Now, Joseph, the C-SPAN, C-SPAN on cable TV.
Yes.
They could have turned on their cameras. It wouldn't have been that hard. It's remotely controlled. Maybe you had pilots there. You had missile control officers, people that have experienced events having to do with your state, and so forth. The Alaska Air incident from 1996, when there's something really huge came in front of a big 747, Japan Airlines.
Yes.
All these, yeah. So we had a lot of great cases with witnesses and people from the FAA. And I sat next to a New York Times reporter, and he said the New York Times wouldn't cover it. They wouldn't send anyone to cover it. It was just him. They wouldn't send a camera or sound guy. So if we're not going to look at the evidence when it comes from people that we entrust our lives to, pilots and missile control officers and law enforcement officers, these are people that we expect to protect us when the time comes. If we don't listen to them, who are we listening to? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. We need to, if it's fine not to agree with the evidence. I'm totally open to any of this being disproved, debunked. That's the nature of science. But you could at least listen to some of the top people from the FAA when they say, this is the longest we ever had a UFO on radar, 30 minutes. And at the end of the meeting, the CIA demanded that they confiscate all the data. Why would you want to confiscate all the data? Why not have a public discussion about it? So something's gone wrong from my point of view in our official system, which has mechanisms for having discussions. We haven't had it. And when people like the citizen hearing people with their own money attempt to fund this and do it in Washington, D.C. at one of the biggest venues, their National Press Club, and they can't get any real attention with really good witnesses for almost a week. I mean, what do you have to do to get the national discussion going? We have had more people come forward since then. I mean, I feel like the momentum's building, but I mean, are we going to be ostriches with our heads in the sand? It has to do with the nature of reality, and it's, I'm sure you'll agree, it's a time to actually have this on the news, on C-SPAN, and we could have a debate. If you can disprove these witnesses, fine. You say they're just making it up, I'm okay. I don't think so, but at least you could engage, but you can't just keep ignoring it. And that's what we've been having for decades.
Right. And these things, okay, in the sky might be pertaining to other dimensional beings, other races. And that might be the fear, because we see that the people in power might be these other dimensional beings and other races themselves. So it's kind of hard for them to go ahead and, let the cat out the bag when they're really the, wolf, kind of keeping us like really scared. They're like, well, we don't want to really let these people see the true colors. So it's a hard thing to go ahead and show for them. For us, it's really kind of more it's more acceptable, to talk about these things nowadays, and now it empowers us, right? People like you and I, it's like making us truly believe that everything we've had in a etherical manner, let's just say pertaining to dreams or psychic viewing, is true, and we're like not so shy about it anymore, right? We're really believing it, and the time is now. Yes, we have to speak up, and these I believe if we can go ahead and just constantly drop these pins, no matter what, they're just gonna stick in nature, because it's truth. As we know, truth prevails, and if over centuries, people in power have tried to manipulate reality and try to hide the truth, but no matter what, the truth always has been able to kind of shine through. I know people, let's just say society in America is a little confusing. Some people get it, some people don't, and it's not their fault. It's really us the leaders, we have to kind of just understand that now in 2022 maybe the veil is really thinning with them let's just say the elite activating things like the dark energy machine in South Dakota, even more so these fusion reactors in like China and other places, the CERN portal. So there's these like quantum technologies, and if we're looking at it from an ancient standpoint, might these quantum technologies that they're currently using be the opposite side of what the pyramid in Bosnia is? Because let's say pyramid of Bosnia is part of a light. It's part of a good nature, and then these CERN portals and dark energy portals are part of an evil nature. Stemming from ancient bloodlines, ancient ideas, and it's just through these technologies is the war, the Ramanas, the everything. And so I mean it's kind of been this way where the gods have always hidden their hand a little bit to most of the modern society. They've in Egypt, these people would we see the hieroglyphs, they would have like creatures. The pharaohs had creatures on their head, like they had animal heads. I don't really know if that was like just a normal human putting on technology to go ahead and make people think that that's what it was, as we seen Stargate trope about it, the Stargate 1990s movie, how they just had a technology that they could put on these armor suits and made them look like that. Who knows what it really is, but we do see that it's very prevalent, and they're just hiding it from the people who don't want to find out. And so we want to find out. We're gonna see it. We kind of see it all. And so,
Joseph, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Can I share this link that you sent me on Twitter to get people into chat and stuff, or is that my personal link? Or if we share
no, that StreamYard is for anybody who's viewing on YouTube.
I'm gonna go ahead and just share it.
Okay.
And we can, wait a minute.
Yeah. So if you could you go ahead and talk a little bit more about your book?
Yeah. I want to get into dark matter with you, because I think there's some misconceptions about it, and I'm just gonna say, join us now live.
Sweet. Yeah.
We're talking UFOs.
This is also on YouTube too. So all my viewers, I will be putting this on Spotify and other platforms.
Okay, good. So let me answer your questions about this. All right, now got that out of the way. All right, so listen, we have to watch out from our preconceptions. Just because we call something dark matter doesn't mean it's dark in the sense of being evil, or dark in the sense of being negative. What we're talking about is a type of matter that's predominant in the universe over ordinary matter by a factor of 10 to 1, Joseph. So for everything you can see around you, there's 10 times as much invisible matter that we'll never see with light, because it doesn't interact with light. And it doesn't interact electromagnetically either. It's dark. And some of that, physicists, astrophysicists have determined, are relic neutrinos. These are from the cosmic background radiation from the Big Bang, from the beginning of the universe. And they're still streaming around from that event 13 billion years ago. And they're streaming through the atmosphere right now. They come from far away, and they're lensed and affected by the moon and the sun. But these neutrinos are a part of what we call cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction. They provide energy to those types of so-called fusion processes at an atomic level, and create a sort of self-sustaining reaction. And there's various physicists, Alexander Parkhomov, who wrote this great book called Space, Earth, Human, which you can find on Amazon. Then there's Takeaki Matsumoto, a Japanese researcher that came to similar conclusions. That, and his book is also Takeaki Matsumoto's on Amazon. Both of these were translated by the Martin Fleisch Memorial Project, Bob Greenyer, who's done a great job at bringing this material to us. So both of these physicists show us at one level, you're having this cosmological influence on us from very tiny particles, but they're big enough to interact with matter. And then Matsumoto has shown us that, a little bit contrary to what you're saying, it's not that these fusion reactors and these things that CERN is doing, or the detector in South Dakota, these are not inherently negative things. These are testing for one of the fundamental forces of the universe, which is called electronuclear collapse. And that's what makes stars work. It makes black holes form, neutron stars. But the real kicker that Matsumoto showed us, and the reason I wrote Dark Matter Monsters, is this happens at a biological level too. It happens at an atomic level. You get subatomic black hole-like objects where there's been a gravitational collapse. And that is created from dark matter coming in, according to Matsumoto, at least a little tiny bit of it, neutrinos, the relic neutrinos. And some of it, it creates more dark matter in this kind of chain reaction. So my idea behind Dark Matter Monsters is it possible that because there's so much dark matter around, that there are life forms, biological life forms, that are harnessing dark matter and dark energy, which is even more prevalent than dark matter. Dark energy being the force that pushes galaxies apart, and dark matter being the force that astrophysicists speculated had to exist 100 years ago, that holds galaxies together, because there's not enough material there to hold them together from the physical matter we can see. So there's a lot more dark matter and dark energy around, and you would just expect there should be dark energy and dark matter life forms that we can't always detect directly, but maybe have the ability to come into our reality sometimes, to pop in. And this is what people see from time to time with various strange animals and creatures that we call cryptids, that they're utilizing some other fundamental aspect of how the universe works that you and I are not really conscious of as much and don't use it. I'm saying not as much because I've seen people do PK exercises where they can project energy from their hands. I felt it. And what some of us speculate in this area is that they've actually harnessed these relic neutrinos and are projecting the same sort of wavelength out again from their body. In other words, we're already naturally interacting with cosmic energies, and it can be seen in terms of variations in beta decay rates that should not vary at all according to our physics textbooks, plant growth rates, various chemical and biological processes which seem to vary based on the Earth's position in the Milky Way, this flux of neutrino matter, dark matter flux. And then you have this coherent matter on Earth, which has various names. Another state of matter beyond plasmas, beyond the solid states of matter that you and I are familiar with, and beyond plasmas, which are like neon light bulbs and fluorescent and lightning and aurora borealis. There's a coherent state of matter, which was actually seen first here in a lab in 1995 in Boulder, called the Bose-Einstein condensate. But what we know now since the discovery of the Bose-Einstein condensate is you can have coherent matter where all the particles are at the same frequency and temperature. You can have that at room temperature. It doesn't just have to be at super cold temperature. So once you have this, Joseph, you have teleportation, quantum teleportation, you have cloaking, things that can look like other things. You can have invisibility because the matter is really morphing. It has a lot of ability to morph and change now, rather than be fixed at the frequencies that we're used to. And that coherent state of matter can interact with dark matter. It can lens and flux dark matter. And even previously classified Soviet research from the 90s shows us that what else but fractal geometry explains why certain shapes tap into the 0 point, the quantum vacuum, as it's called, the Dirac sea, this other world below the level of matter of quantum potential, where antiparticles exist and mirror worlds and so forth, and what Paul Dirac speculated about antiparticles. The fractal shapes of nature, to put that, and to go back to what we were talking about right at the beginning of the show, the fractal shapes of nature allow us to tap into that, what's been called the 0 point, the quantum vacuum, the Dirac sea. And this is shown from the Soviet, previously classified Soviet research that was written about by researchers Zverbelis and Nevesky, and I write about them in Dark Matter Monsters. They're no longer with us physically, but they wrote about this, and they said, what's the shape? The only shape that we know about that can fill all of space-time and create this closed magnetic field that goes down, 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 down into the quantum field. That's exactly what they said. The Koch snowflake fractal shape, which is what I researched at WSU in my dissertation. And so we have this from the Soviet researchers, American researchers, David Freiberger from Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, again, looking at some of these condensed types of matter. And he said the same thing. He called them, he didn't call it Len or cold fusion, he called it vortons. But it was the same idea, these very strong magnetic fields that compress matter. Once you're compressing matter, it can become coherent. It can strip away electrons and create charge clusters and all these other forms of matter. So I guess my long answer to your question, Joseph, is pretty kind of a long answer. These are fundamentally neutral aspects of the universe. We can use it in a positive way or a negative way. If you want to just use it for a military purposes, I guess it's been classified for a long time in our country. We know it's classified because so much of the ball lightning research funded by the Air Force, if you look at the PDFs, about half of the reports are redacted. It's just all whited out at the last half. They want to show you what they've been doing with ball lightning. So we know this has been the subject of classified research for gravitational propulsion and so forth. But this is how nature works. And what I'm arguing in Dark Matter Monsters is it's quite possible that there are life forms with us right now that already know all this, didn't have to wait for the patents from Lockheed Martin and from U.S. Air Force research into ball lightning. They've already figured it out thousands of years ago, and they're very good at using it to, be the predators that they are. They're to hunt and stalk prey, to be invisible, to teleport out of our way when they don't want to deal with us, to show up when they do want to deal with us. And that's what I think is going on. I think this is a fundamentally condensed form of matter. And I will show you a picture of, I had an artist draw, I didn't want to interrupt, I started about to say something. Let me just show you the picture of what this looks like. This is what the Soviets found. And I had my artists redraw their pictures. It's a closed closed toroid, a hypertoroid or fractal toroid. This is the schematic, is you have loops on top of loops on top of loops. So instead of having just a magnetic and an electrical field like you would have had in Maxwell's equations, you now have magnetic fields looping around the electrical field around the ring. And then around those rings, you have smaller rings, all the way smaller and smaller. And this is a fractal shape. It's self-similar at any scale. It turns out that fractals are the key to understanding these condensed energy phenomena. They interact with neutrinos, create their own magnetic field. It's freaking fascinating. Anyway, I'm talking a long time here. Go ahead.
Right. So these entities might be present at places like Skinwalker Ranch. And recently I watched a movie on Netflix called Spectral, where in depth they showed the Bose-Einstein condensate research, and they were using this technology. It was a battle against entities. It was very fascinating. That's what kind of actually led me on the little bit more into this. Like I really started getting more involved. I was like, you know what? These things are really going based on some truth if we kind of look at it. And the Hollywood movies, they really like to show a lot of these as myths and fantasy and fairy tale and fluff. But what we see in a lot of these movies, sci-fi movies that show entities, that show these ancient technologies, have some type of correlation to what is actually going on behind the scenes. It's not always 100% truth. I'm not saying that, but there is some basis behind, the things that we see.
Yes, there is a basis, and for me, it started with Star Trek in the '60s, late '60s. When that show started, I was just a toddler, and I used to watch that show with my brother on a black and white TV back in the days when there were no color TVs, and at least we didn't have one. And so, no, this shows the fiction, the science fiction, even Star Trek to this day, because it's still going on with new seasons and new characters and new shows, which is always fun to watch.
It's a legendary show. That's honestly,
they got a lot of these ideas from scientists a long time ago, including the types of science I'm talking to you about right now, and they incorporated it into the show miraculously. So science fiction can be way ahead of where we're at, and often it turns out Robert Heinlein, I think, was the author, science fiction author. You might have heard of him. He said science fiction of today is tomorrow is the science fact of today, or science fiction of today is the science of tomorrow. So, yeah.
And Star Trek has mentioned something like the Galactic Federation. The Vatican recently, over the last few years, actually said that they were in contact with the Galactic Federation. And so
right.
There might be these alliances in the sky and, alliances outward of our own world. Three that I had, clearly understood from ancient history and the way that these scripts go is that there is some type of, let's just say, world or crystal or extra land in the north, like high up in the north. We see these ancient maps where it's just like there's this Mount Meru, I believe it was called, and it was in the north. We understood Admiral Byrd talk about this crystal city out down south, further past Antarctica, and we even know that the ancients talked about the netherworld being an existent place. So, what we see can definitely be from these extra parts, like when we mention entities, Bigfoots, aliens, Galactic Federation. They might be coming from these places that ancient history has already been talking about. Yes. Then we look at places like
Shasta,
these
Mount
stargates. Mount Shasta is a fascinating place on the West Coast, but we look at places like these stargates also, like down in South America.
No, you had them near you, though. You had them in the East Eddy Ranch.
That's a fascinating place too. I'm actually going to visit that soon.
The people that wrote these books, Hunt for the Skinwalker and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by James Lukatsky, that came out last year. He said, and you mentioned Skinwalker before, which is a good example of areas where you have more of this type of condensed matter effects happening. But they mentioned area on the east side of the Cascade Mountains, I believe, in the Yakima region.
Yeah, I'm in the Yakima Valley.
Yes. In your area, they said there was another portal area that had the creatures, the UFOs, and they mentioned the Yakima area. So these these areas that have increased concentration of life forms coming through, they seem to be all over the world. I mean, we knew there's one at Marley Ranch, which you mentioned Alan Hynek, his assistant, Ted Phillips, who passed away, I'm told, a couple of years ago, but he did research at so-called Marley Ranch in Missouri, and it was like Skinwalker on steroids. They had the creatures. You should see some of the pictures. They got photos of some of these. No one can identify what they are. They look like huge polar bears mixed with a sloth. Last I checked, there are no polar bears walking around Missouri, that can walk through fences and have hair that's 16 inches long. But in any case, there's one in Colorado, I'm told, in Elbert County, southeast of Denver. Same thing. You have the beings show up, the creatures, the UFOs, the entities.
Might these be Thunderbirds, or what the ancients knew as these dragons in the sky? There's the Ameru that would come out of these pyramids, and even the Quetzal and these other things. It's fascinating how it's just constantly prevalent.
It's what happened was we had something called the scientific revolution 500 years ago, which is not a bad thing. It was more like people were saying, well, let's have evidence here instead of just believing what the church told us or Aristotle. Well, let's look at our eyes and see what experiments show us, because there was a lot of mythology and superstition back then, and they realized, like, we don't need all this anymore. Like, there was this idea that if you take I forgot that all these ideas about rubbing garlic on a magnet, it would lose its magnetism, or if you had a drum head made of lambskin near a wolf, it wouldn't bang anymore. And then they realized none of this was true, that their vacuum spaces were supernatural, vacuums inside of bottles. They believed that this was some sort. So these people said, wait, what is really going on here? And it ended up with the Copernican mindset, Galileo and Giordano Bruno, who actually got burned at the stake in part for beliefs in this, that we were not a special planet. It was a huge universe, and that there was the idea of these laws and that it could be verified. Now, the thing about these phenomena we're talking about is they're more rare. They're not as common, and they seem to be affected really by your own mindset too. So there's been this kind of idea that science wants it proved to them that these phenomena exist. But as people like myself have been saying, you can't have the evidence if you don't turn the cameras on at the National Press Club. If you're not willing to have a hearing. And there was one in 2001 with the Disclosure Project, Dr. Stephen Greer. I didn't attend that, but it was the same sort of thing, like citizen hearing witnesses for 2 days who had seen pictures of structures on the moon and reverse engineered craft. Now, this is evidence, at least it's good witness testimony, and they would know where the evidence would be if we could go look in those basements, wherever they are. So the real question is, again, to have a discussion about this. It's been happening a long time. These cryptids have been around for a long time. But for some reason, Joseph, which I'm always perplexed by every day, we haven't really felt comfortable talking about it. And when you and I go to school as youngsters, we're taught that this is just stories, it's fantasy, it's just the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, it's children's stories, don't worry, it's not really real. But the only thing is, it's real. Why you get these cryptids around UFO sightings? Personally, I think that's what you get when you get bleed through from parallel realities, is you're going to get more than you bargained for. I mean, it's not like you can just turn on a spigot and get so much bleed through from parallel reality. So it seems like when you open up the wormhole, like a lot of stuff comes through. And I think that's what you find at Marley Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch and the area around Yakima that they investigated in Elbert County and all these other locations probably around the world where this happens. Would the witnesses who saw these events happen, would they be believed? Because, it's not just Skinwalker Ranch, by the way, it's the whole Uinta Basin. As you're probably familiar, I mean, people from that area say you get these Bigfoot and the Dogman around that area for centuries. So it's like some of these
and
areas,
places like the Bermuda Triangle, where they clearly say that, like, there's just a warp in the reality, like it'll just look different, reality is just so different, like magnetism, or it's just a shield, a wall, or something.
You have these fractal spaces where the laws of reality are different. You have it at Bermuda Triangle, you have it at Skinwalker Ranch, and all these other locations. We could look at the science behind it. It'd be a fascinating project. I mean, we do have the TV show about Skinwalker Ranch, but it needs to be something that, because when the folks at OSAP attempted to get more funding for Skinwalker Ranch, they were told by the intelligence agencies in DC, we don't want anything to do with it. It's going to affect our reputation. We're going to be ostracized. We're going to lose funding. As long as you have these organizations which are more concerned about funding and their public appearance versus what they actually do, what they actually study, we're not going to make progress. You have to have people who are willing to take a risk and say, look, we don't know what we're dealing with here, but there's enough witnesses, there's got enough good scientific evidence, there's photographic evidence, and there's enough other types of evidence that we should have all the witnesses come forward, congressional testimony, and find out, what did you see? I mean, it's amazing that if you read Lakatsky's book, Skinwalkers in Tibet, and he said they went to Department of Homeland Security and they were told by the head of DHS, we're a new kid on the block. This is going to be bad for our future as a government agency because it'll make us look weird and people will think we're strange. So we're passing, even though this would have been a very good research project. I mean, just talking to Terry Lovelace, you should talk to him sometime. He's author of Incident at Devil's Den. Right. So with him and his buddy Toby got taken up by a triangular craft during a camping trip in Arkansas. He told me the other day, and he told me I can talk about this and it's public now. I mean, he wanted it to go public. He got a call from the Department of Homeland Security, and they said, we're officially investigating alien abductions as a criminal activity, whatever that means. And Terry couldn't get them to elaborate. But now they're taking it seriously. But when Lakatsky talked to him 10 years ago, they said, oh, we don't want anything to do with it, or at least not publicly. So look, this needs to be brought out in the open or not. I mean, and if you don't want to bring it out in the open, we're going to have a Sputnik moment. Sputnik moment for you youngsters out there is when the other side has satellites and they're flying over your country and you don't have other countries that made progress that you haven't made. And they make a technological leap, and that's what could happen if we don't look at this. There was a time when the Soviet Union, which ceased to exist around the time that you were born, but the Soviet Union back then was ahead of the U.S. in terms of microelectronics. That's why they got the satellites up first. But because of the paranoia and infighting within their system, which the Soviet system was famous for, they never made progress like we did, but they were ahead of us at one point. So this could happen again to us if we don't take this seriously. And I mean, how many pilots do you need coming forward from the Air Force and the Navy to say, we almost hit something, we want to know what's out there in the airspace?
Well, there is this speculation that each side of the military has their own alliance with alien entities. Army would be linked with reptilians. This Navy would be, I guess, with like the water, people. The Air Force is with avians. So there is these other races that have been speculated, and when we look at,
but that's speculation, Joseph. We don't
right.
really
No. But when we actually look at the Sumerian text, and we look at these ancient hieroglyphs, these tablets, and they reference the stars, and so the Sumerian text references our creators with the Palladians, how these races came down here, call them angelic, through their fallen angel nature. And so when we look at some of that linking, now there might be multiple races of fallen angels, and they're all going their own ways. So after thousands and thousands of years, they're all trying to battle for dominance. And so when we look at, let's just say the military may be trying to study a little bit more of this paranormal, where the political side just doesn't want to, unless it's Hillary Clinton, her studying Nephilim.
Joseph, I gotta stop you there. This is speculation. We don't know this to be fact.
Well, I mean, it's one side of, it's two sides of the coin. One side is scientifical, the other side is spiritual, and then both sides need to come together, at least, in a very profound way, and not just saying that this is all like fairies and fairy dust. I'm not saying it's fairy dust. It's just
the only way to determine this, Joseph, is to have hearings where the witnesses are under oath. And I'm not saying what you're saying isn't true. But we would have representatives from the Air Force and the different branches of the military come forward and say, look, are you interacting with extraterrestrial species right now? Or we could hear their response. We have to proceed on this from what we know. We can't just go into speculation, because then we just won't know what's fact and what's fiction. So I would say, we know there's something going on here. We need a careful process to tease out what the truth is and what the stories are.
And so does your book go a little bit more in depth with, what you think about these and in your collection of books, so that way my viewers can really kind of get a separation from their mainstream maybe teaching, because I do want to branch this out to everybody. I just don't want to have a what do they call it? I'm singing to the choir. I don't want to just have this echo chamber. So I do like to link this in many different places. So, do you believe that there are helpers to humanity per se, that, sometimes we do hear of people here like Edgar Casey channeling, a being. We hear about other people finding channelings of beings, beings of light, and sending them information. Might this be a helping tool? We understand that there is things like possession. When we look at some of these celebrities, they're openly admitting it. They're like, I have this alter ego. Beyonce, I have this.
Well, again, I would say you have to go from what we know to the unknowns. You have to start with the knowns. This is the only way you're going to bring the rest of society along. You can't just go into unknown things. Now, since you asked, my first book was Opening Minds, and I wrote that 20 years ago roughly to the day. Opening Minds. And I'm happy to sign a copy for people if you go to my website, newcrystalmind.com, or you can find it on Amazon. And are you toking there, Joseph, or just having a good cigarette?
Oh, it's cannabis, definitely.
Okay, you're in Washington. Good. So if you're in one of the states where this is not legal, turn off the show now. I'm kidding. So in any case, my first book was about the strange phenomena we saw around crop circles. For me, that was camera and battery failure and a lot of other really weird electromagnetic effects, which showed me that there was something going on with the shape. Again, we know a little more about what it is. It's fractal toroids. But at the time, we didn't know. So I started to progress from that through remote viewing, resonance, looking at if there's some fundamental scientific principles. Back at the time, we called it subtle energy. I think now we know what it is. It's the neutrino flux. At least that's my best understanding of the situation. I kind of progressed through that through a book called Planetary Intelligence, which is about taking care of yourself and being, resonant with nature. And then Black Swan Ghosts was my book about a lot of UFO witnesses I came in contact with, including one in Idaho, Louise Vobes, that saw a disc up in Usk, Washington, picking huckleberries with her brother, northeast part of the state. And the Air Force came up from Spokane. Someone called them and they came up and cordoned the area off. So, and then dark matter monsters, the reason I wrote this is I never would have believed that there was any similarity between crop circle phenomena and cryptids, but there's something in common between cryptids, UFOs, and crop circles, which is you see these orbs and balls of light around all these phenomena. And why would you see these orbs and balls of light around an escaped gorilla, if that's what it is? I mean, have you ever been to the zoo and you saw orbs of light? I did. It's not your ordinary mammal. And you get these around crop circles. I've seen them. I've seen the photographs of them right in our area where we were, people that saw them and took photos. You get them around UFOs. It has to be the same underlying type of matter, condensed, coherent matter. Ball lightning. in essence, is seen around these types of phenomena because it's a type of coherent matter. Even when it's very small scale, like Takeaki Matsumoto showed us, it creates electrogravitic collapse and transmutation of elements and new types of materials forming at a microscopic level. So this was the commonality I saw in all of this, which led to the startling conclusion that there's life forms around us that are making use of these principles because they find it to their advantage for survival, to be able to interact with coherent matter, ball lightning, and so forth. And I think this is what you're seeing around places like Skinwalker Ranch, are beings that are at a different frequency than we are. They're at a frequency where they can take advantage of coherent matter and do things that we normally in our ordinary state of matter can't do.
Frequency is a very fascinating subject. I get into it, and I actually speculate myself. Now, viewers, you can go ahead and start making a blueprint, but I really think that if we create this frequency altering through sound and light, we can start manipulating the veil and kind of start seeing these creatures and, kind of really start getting their attention. That's how what ghost hunters do. They mess with the electromagnetic
Haunted site.
spectrum.
Good example. Yes.
Yeah, and it's that fascinating that the technology is present. So it's frequency is awesome that you brought that up. Like, yeah,
resonance.
I love
this all has to do with resonance, frequency, and resonance. It's the basis of quantum mechanics. It's the basis of physics and sound and frequency. These are all the same sort of topics. And if there are life forms that know how to manipulate frequency and resonance, they would have abilities that we don't have. They would be able to access states of matter that we normally don't see or perceive directly. And I think that's what quantum mechanics tells us. I mean, you go back to the 50s, there was someone named Hugh Everett III at Princeton who created the relative states idea, or later became known as the many worlds idea. Many parallel realities that quantum mechanics describes a plethora of possibilities in any given space. And what you and I see, like right now, when we're having this talk, that is one state of the quantum field, but that doesn't mean it's not manifested in other states simultaneously parallel to us. And some of those could bleed through to ours in a nonlinear way and pop in and seem like ghosts or haunted phenomena or cryptids. In other words, it's, what it reminds me of, Joseph? It's like there's a highway that's running alongside of us that we don't know it's there, but other people know it's there. And they can pop off they can go off the exit ramp and visit us. That's the I'm getting right now. They can go off the highway. They can take the exit anytime they want and slow down a little bit, right? Slow the car down and come and interact with us for whatever reasons. Stop off on Earth, maybe, I don't know, get some water, find some deer, whatever they do while they're here. Get back on the highway, go back where they're going. So this seems to me a kind of description of what cryptids do. And the reason we need to talk about it, people say, well, why does it matter? It matters because people are experiencing them. They're having seen them around their homes, and they're having PTSD. And then they're quitting their jobs because they're afraid to go outside their home. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who said they never want to go camping again. So I think that's pretty serious when there's something going on that people are afraid to go outside their homes. They're afraid to go out at night. They're afraid to camp. They don't want to hike alone anymore because they encountered something that's so unknown and is not supposed to exist that they have a tremendous stress reaction to it. You can't blame them. These creatures can be big and they can be potentially hostile. Sometimes they're not always like that. It's just a big unknown. And I would say it's not fair to the witnesses for law enforcement to be holding back what they know. I know that no one totally understands this. I don't totally understand it. I'm just suggesting some principles of physics that might be involved here from our observations of what's seen around these cryptids, which is time loss, telepathic messages in your head, orbs, and electromagnetic failure, like your car won't start just when you need to get away. And it just turns, nothing happens, right? You've heard stories like that around these cryptids. I mean, when's the last time you heard a car battery failing around an escaped gorilla? No way. It's not an escaped gorilla. They used to call them, you look at David Paulides' book, about Bigfoot and wild men. I forgot the rest of the title.
The missing 411 stuff.
Yeah, he did books about Bigfoot before he was doing Missing 411, and he has found articles going back hundreds of years in our own papers and other newspapers around the world of descriptions of big, hairy, wild men that could howl and scream. And, you know, it sounds to me like Bigfoot. This character has been around in various guises. There's different species of them, obviously. But the point is, I just feel like these people should have a place to go. By the way, I should say that I'm starting a Zoom call group twice a month for people that want to just talk about this, twice a month on Thursday nights. Just go to my New Crystal Mind blog, newcrystalmind.com, and you can sign up for $10 a month. We'll have a Zoom call and we'll talk about all this, and especially for witnesses, because if you talk to them, they might not have shared it. There's a woman I just interviewed recently, Barbara, who I found through these interviews after Dark Matter Monsters, and she had encountered one on an archaeological dig. The whole group saw it. Glowing yellow eyes staring at her outside the tents at night. Footprints the next day. She said she didn't talk about it for 50 years. She can't remember what they said on the way home in the car. Sometimes, Joseph, people end up not being friends anymore who've had this encounter. They can't agree what they saw. Someone gets scared. They feel ashamed to be around each other because it's so terrifying, and they never talk about it again. This is why we're not hearing about it. You get groups of hunters going out there. It's so intimidating. They go out, they think they're going to just be hunting wild pigs or deer, and they end up encountering these creatures or other things we don't know exactly what they are. They don't even want to see each other again. It's so out of the bounds of what they expected. So I think at least when people go out in the woods, or even outside your home in some areas where it's rural, if the government said, like UFOs, like we're saying, let's be responsible here, like you have responsible cannabis smoking. You're not going to get in a car right now because this is going to affect your driving. It's just a sensible, responsible thing to do. No one who's a responsible person would get in a car after they've been toking or had any edibles for quite a while. Well, same thing going into the woods. You should know there's a possibility, it's small, but you could run into a cryptid. You should just know this is going to happen and what you should do if this happens, what some of the behaviors of these cryptids are. It's pretty repeatable. I distinguish about this. There are a couple park rangers have talked about seeing these creatures. They know about this. Is it responsible for the missing 411 that David Paulides talks about? And he has apparently new film coming out about the UFO connection. I don't know. I wasn't there. It could be, but why don't we have some officials talk about it? Why doesn't the Park Service give him information that he's asked for instead of charging a couple $1 million for all the missing people? What is going on in those parks? I mean, I'm open to all the explanations, but it's like there's no talk about it. So my feeling about this, it's better to have discussion about it than not. What's the worst that can happen? Instead of pretending that this is just paranormal woo-woo that kooky people like myself are bringing up, let's be honest about it. And one more thing. I have a petition on change.org to protect Bigfoot. If you go to change.org/protect-Bigfoot, change.org/protect-Bigfoot, you can sign it. And I'm asking for federal protection of Bigfoot so we recognize them as a living sentient species. And, like some counties have already passed laws preventing you from hunting and harassing them. I mean, if we treat them with respect, maybe they won't be as hostile. Because I mean, it certainly doesn't help your odds when you're out in the woods if other people have treated them badly and they see another human. How do you think they're going to react? So anyway, we should have discussion about this. We should be talking. Hey, Joseph, do we have any questions? Do you have anyone on your feed who wants to ask any questions before we conclude for today?
No, just someone said that you have a guest, or I had a guest and it was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, so I really wanted to go ahead and get my viewers a little bit more attuned from your perspective. Now, you have a little bit more standings and accolades than I do, and it's fascinating to hear your journey throughout this. See, for me, I'm in Yakima Valley. I've had these experiences my whole life. I've seen crafts. I've seen entities. I've seen entities in my sleep and while I'm awake. Things are just here and very mystical. it's there's nothing else I could say. And to hear from you, yeah, it's matching with everything that I've studied myself and I've speculated. So yeah, I really appreciate this. There's not really any questions though. So
let me check Twitter to see if anyone responded, because we had a whole bunch of mentions here. Let's see. Nope, I don't.
Right. So would you speculate that maybe some of these things might be helpers to humanity versus rulers and disobeyers to humanity? That some of these entities, and that's why maybe it's hard for the powers that be in America to let this out of the bag, because it's the opposing force. It's why would they go ahead and let the good guys be known?
It's not an opposing force. It's the
right. It's not an opposing force to us for sure. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're all right though, Joseph. Governments don't like to admit that there's anything there that they can't control, right? No government is going to say to you, we're not in control of your airspace. You could be taken out of your bed at night and we can't do anything about it. They're never going to say that. They would feel their job is to prevent mass panic, protect you. And if they can't protect you, they prefer not to tell you about it. So you don't have to be scared unnecessarily. But I think, I mean, we're just dealing with reality, and reality has a lot of players in it. Just like on Earth, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. It's just like people, and this is what these entities are like. I'm sure there's just a whole range. We shouldn't.
There's definitely helpers in my
it's
belief.
Both. I would imagine there's both types like there are on Earth. I would just say it's fractal. What you see on Earth is probably what the universe is like. But I would imagine if we could communicate with them or establish.
Joe Rogan seems to communicate with DMT elves.
Right, the DMT elves. Well, look, whatever floats your boat.
And that's all him. I haven't done that.
I say we get out of kindergarten and go to first grade. And the way to get out of kindergarten is let's admit that this is at least real and stop saying that you saw a bear. That's what these witnesses are always told. You saw a bear that walked on two legs.
No, absolutely not no bear.
Threw rocks at you. And last time I checked, bears are not really good at throwing rocks at you, and howled like a banshee. And
psychically caught your attention.
Yeah, and can run 60 miles an hour, catch up with your car. I mean, last time I checked, bears I've seen bears stand up. They'll walk for a little bit and then go down again. They don't walk on two legs like that. And these people, they don't run. Well, I mean,
it was just fascinating. So earlier this year, there was this video about a Bigfoot or Yeti seeing on a icy or snowy mountain, right? And the person who let that video out the bag just was found dead like last month. And it was just weird. I mean, maybe that's also why. Maybe that's why we're not so known.
I don't know.
To
we
the
have
public.
to be fearless here. Whatever's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Happen. I just say let's get the cat out of the bag and let's have a discussion and stop firing these park rangers that talk about this, and stop lying to people that what you saw was a bear. It's just ridiculous. I mean, are we like little children in this country? Come on, this is stupid. We should have an adult discussion. We're the people on the planet that should do it. We have this representative democracy. We have all these town meetings we could be having. We're not the Soviet Union where everything is central controlled from Moscow the way it used to be. We're supposed to be able to have discussions about it. You had newspaper articles going back hundreds of years like Polites. You've had this happening. So what are we dealing with? What's the best guess? And no, don't say it's a weather balloon.
I mean, NASA just created their study team, and they're launching a 9-month investigation that just launched yesterday or 2 days ago.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm
same.
But is this a real investigation, or is this like the Condon Committee, which happened right behind me here, where they reached the conclusion before they even started the study? As Condon said, they already reached their. He was just going to dismiss it, but he was going to make it look like a scientific study. Is that what's going on? Or are they really interested in all these reports and really good photos over the years and witness encounters and testimony from people that I've met that say this is extraterrestrial material? I didn't see that guy that I met on that committee, and he told me point blank it was ET. So
Well, I did just see that 19 state attorney generals were studying banks and linked to the WEF and their alliance. So I think what we're seeing maybe over the next few years after this pandemic, it really shook the house. It made everybody stand on their own 2 feet instead of relying on the bigger money, because the money didn't come in from the bigger anymore, and so everybody now has to rely on their own state. And so I think what we're seeing over the next 5 years is a push for truth, a push from the internal, and everybody has their power now. Everybody has power, everybody has money. There's money in everybody's pockets throughout the state. So things can happen, things are going to be pushed. And there is this speculation from the White House how Congress wants to go ahead and also do their own internal UFO and UAP study, just like NASA. Yeah,
they are.
Right.
And you've got some Congress people who seem pretty good, who seem like Kristen Gillibrand, Marco Rubio. You have got some people who say, look, we need to know what this is. And New York State had its own share of Hudson Valley UFO triangles in the 80s. I interviewed one of those witnesses on my YouTube channel. And Congress could do it. They could say, to heck with you guys. That's our job. We're here to ask the questions, to find out how the money's getting appropriated in the government. And are there secret programs that shouldn't be secret? And that's why, look, the Pentagon is supposed to be issuing their yearly UFO report any day now. It's supposed to be out by Halloween, right? And that was from some congressional mandate as part of the NDAA, if I'm not mistaken, that the government had to have a yearly UFO. The Pentagon had to have a yearly UFO report. So maybe the system can reform itself, Joseph. It's possible. Possible.
I see it. Whether we're living in a great shift, of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, or the Great Awakening, I think that there is this dimensional change. On a electrical level, we are heightening. On a spiritual level, we are getting more collected. The souls aren't so lost anymore, I guess. There is some, but it seems like more now everybody's kind of getting this understanding of good versus evil. So on a physical level, everybody's enhancing themselves through better foods and supplements and learning better techniques of healthcare.
Yes.
So, on a physiological level and, just a collective, we are heightening. And
we are.
Change.
No, I agree. And and the other side of this, the other side of the veil, they could just start showing up more, whether we're ready or not.
Oh, I think that's so. You link this back to the UV spectrum, how we don't really see all the light, and so I think while we heighten ourselves, we actually are capable of seeing more of these entities. That's what I believe, and understandably, if we're all a machine, then the higher we get the machine, then the more we're able to the more that we're able to do and see, and so. If people are like really on bad food and bad thinking, a bad diet, it's not going to. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to see anything. I think they're going to be the ones influenced succumb to the outside entities.
Agree, Joseph.
While we have this, so we retain it. These outside entities can't really influence us as much.
No. I agree. We influence ourselves more than anything else. And it's not what's happening outside. It's your reaction to it. And I agree with you. Taking care of yourself is the first good step. You're not going to experience your full resonant capacity if you're dealing with stress and negativity and it's soaking up all your energy every day. There's no energy left for you to experience the unknown. So a big part of it is not doing things that you don't need to be doing that could be destructive to your life or your health. To take care of yourself in a way that there's energy left over at the end of the day for you to have a little time to wonder, to read, to research. So many good YouTube channels out there right now where you can learn about these phenomena and podcasts. I don't think this has ever existed before. There's so much information if you want to find about Bigfoot, UFOs. I have my free remote mini course. You just go to learnrv.org and you'll see a link for a free mini class. You can just try it out for yourself, totally free of charge. So anyway,
the internet is kind of like the new Library of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely is.
Joseph, I'm going to have to go because as you can see, the sun is setting in Colorado. I'm going to get cold, and my laptop, since it's powering my phone right now for our internet connection, it's going to run out of juice. So we're going to have to say goodbye and hold it.
Hey, it is all right. Honestly, this has been an amazing conversation, and I know my viewers would love this. These topics around Washington State, it's known, UFOs, Bigfoot, entities, dogmen, all of it. We love it. We appreciate you, Simeon. And
thank you, Joseph.
Honestly, blessings to you and protection.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been a lot of fun. Let's do it again sometime.
And yes, we will go ahead and have another conversation, and so we can go deeper into some of these topics and really widen our viewers' mind. That's all we want to do.
That's all we want to do.
Hey, God bless.
You too.
Peace. All right, guys, you heard it right there. Honestly, what do you guys think? Are you guys more of a believer in yourself, in what we can do? Are you a more believer now that the world is a little bit more magical than what you used to know it? You see, the things around us have been around us for thousands of years. This isn't anything new, honestly. Nothing new. This is what has truly been. You see, across generations and continents, we've dabbled with these energies. We've seen these entities. We've lived this life of spiritual magic, where we can put ourselves into a different state of being and, psychic view, and maybe have some guidance from other entities. Now, he can break it down for you, and you should go buy his book. Honestly, go check it out. It's been a wonderful day, wonderful time. Hey, God bless. Enjoy yourselves.
Meditating, analyzing everything I see, so I see new horizons. Took the acid, feeling blasted in my brain, so I've been sitting up inside it, thinking about the present and the future. I'm improving cause I am a trooper, never getting caught up in the loop. Got up out it cause I found the truth. Woke up to a beauty of the day, the sun is shining, so I'm finna stay. Sitting, soaking up all of the rays, till I feel it surging through my brain like some booger sugar. Did a lot of cane, experimented with it, couldn't name all the times I did it, feeling like a fade. Yeah, I'm really glad that I let it go, cause I gotta be prepped for the time when the plane ride is a new norm. So I know I'm gonna stay high, blaze on the ganja, feeling like I make my music go to another level while I take off. I can't ever stop this, fell in love with it, fit like a glove, so I'm never ever done with it. So now I'm about to rip another beat, ayy. One day I'll make a million in a week, yeah, shooting for the top spot. Feel like I'm a hot shot, like I really got a chance with it. I will not flop, somebody gonna make it dance when I pop off. Gonna have all the bitches taking all the tops off. I've been feeling like I'm really gonna kill it for the rest of my life, so I've been staying focused. In my soul, I've been feeling like $1 million, so I know that everything is really getting closer. Yeah, no posers, only been hanging with the ones I've chosen. Only all the people that are living in the right way, cause they spending every day growing. Yeah, no whole shit coming in my life and then leaving in a moment. That's the shit I'll never let into my life again, cause lately I've been feeling like I'm golden. Never showboat, I just showcase on my music that I made this far. Always knew that I could be the one that would get this far. Now I'm right here looking in my mirror, trying to figure out if there's any more fear, cause I'm getting rid of it all, yeah. Yeah, I'm getting rid of it all. Meditating, analyzing everything I see, so I see new horizons. Took the acid, feeling blasted in my brain, so I've been sitting up inside it, thinking about the present and the future. I'm improving cause I am a trooper, never getting caught.